Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for another episode of our series we're currently doing on the ATO debt, insolvency, and cash flow issues SMEs are facing in Australia at the moment. We're very lucky today to have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Terry Kirkham. Terry's business, global business, auctioneers and valuers, Australia-wide business. Terry, I'll never do it justice, but do you just want to give a brief intro on your business and what you do?
Yeah, certainly, Liam. Thanks for having me. Well, we're auctioneers and valuers, and to cut it sort of down the line, we deal in business assets across all industries, and we specialise. We don't buy and sell in any formal way. We work for insolvency practitioners, and we get a lot of work from accountants and lawyers dealing with directors and distressed business assets.
Yeah, it's been quite tough to get you on, mate. I know you've been travelling up north and down to Melbourne, Sydney, all over the place. So Thanks for making the time today, mate. Let's start at the start, I guess. So when do you get engaged in the process?
Yeah, so from an insolvency point of view, I would say that 95% of our work comes from the insolvency area. So some engagements are right on a day of an appointment where an administrator or a liquidator or a receiver would be appointed. Now we're seeing a lot of appointments where we're doing consulting work, more consulting come type valuation work with small business restructuring but that's leads to medium size and large size restructuring as well. So there's different sides of the business, but what happens with my business is that the first part where we get engaged is consulting valuation. So we get to look at the asset valuations, and if we need to, we look at business valuations, but the business valuations, we will deal with a business valuer. We take control and look after the asset component and anything to do with IP. And those reports are used for different purposes. From insolvency point of view, to report to creditors and come up with a strategy of sale. And sometimes a business will be sold as a going concern, and we might be involved in that, where our sales business will kick in and we take over the marketing and we'll look at the process. It might be via tender, for an example. However, from an insolvency process, moving through the valuations, if they close the business down and for whatever reason it can't be sold or it's forced to be closed down, then our auction side of the business or sales side of the business will take over and we'll realise the assets then via online auction on site, or we remove the assets off site and sell them. So really it sort of comes from valuation. In that strategy there, you've got consulting and you've got strategies, a lot to work out in the valuation process. And the second side, not all the time does valuations move to auctions. And then sometimes we then have the auction side of the business. But I will say the valuation consulting business doesn't also too just deal with insolvency. It deals with many other reasons. There could be legal disputes and assets are involved, and we get involved fairly heavily in that sort of thing as well.
So if you're involved, the business is done and you're just trying to recruit money, or there is instances where the business can be brought back from the dead?
Oh no. There's certainly in the front part of our business, we work with a lot of specialist accountants and business advisors that are there to try and save businesses. And I would have said in the last 10 years that sort of market has become quite popular. It's certainly increased. My experience next year is 40 years in this industry. So in what I've seen in 39 years to this date, from a very young age to where I sit today, the resurrection of businesses and the restructuring and the saving of businesses is on the forefront really from the government down, and there's lots of people that are in the marketplace now. It's definitely a growing market, and where we're used for that is it's very important that the firms like mine provide independence in reports to what's the worst case. And for an example, you might have a situation where the realisable asset value might only be 150,000. The debt may be far greater, but it might be in the best interest of creditors to try and keep that business afloat, if it can be kept afloat, and traded on. And they'll use our reports, heavily on that sort of decision making.
Yeah. But can you talk about what business was like for you pre-COVID, during COVID, and now what the landscape is in your industry?
Yeah, look, I think my opinion was and is to this day that pre-COVID we were definitely heading into a large downturn. I think that we were seeing now. And I know that because I know coming into COVID we had a number of files coming in that were insolvent and a lot more type of work rather than distressed sort of restructuring type work. There was a lot more insolvency starting to come in where we're seeing things starting to close down. And then I know we had some big files of some decent sized businesses that were going to come in and start were just about to come in. And when COVID hit, those businesses didn't come in. I think out of 7, 3 came in and went through some form of insolvency. One shut down, and and we sold that, and we sold that for going concern for about 2.3 million. So that was a good result. But definitely COVID stopped and slowed down that process of insolvencies without fail. We're now seeing the insolvency numbers, and everyone's been talking about insolvencies for the last 12 months, 15 months. The one thing I would say is my file intake, meaning the first up appointments of valuations and consulting type work, hasn't really changed. The numbers are still quite there. So that says that in my line of business, no matter what's happened in the last 33 years of owning this business, that those numbers haven't changed. But where we see the change is when businesses are being forced to close, and they are closing, and then the auction business is now taking on a lot more files. So out of the valuation business of, let's say, 200 files, pre-COVID, the auction business might have been seeing 20. I would say now we're seeing 200, and we're now probably seeing 50, and that's probably where I've seen the big difference.
Yeah. And can you put that down to anything? Was it just because of that prolonging during COVID? Or?
No. The cost. If you've been in business for a long time, and I think what people need to look at is the people that have been in business for 20 years or 30 years can look back and see the climb over time.
Yeah.
Where I've seen the climb over time, and it's something that I don't think a lot of people talk about, is this leasehold bubble. Now, I'll talk about that because in 2020, I had a number of factories, and the landlord came to me and he gave it to a real estate agent. I was dealing with a landlord originally through the 1990s, and came to me and put it to an agent. The agents sat down with me and said they want a 5-year term, 5 by 5 by 5, and then they wanted fixed increases each year. So let's talk 25 years. The way that worked out, that's increased 100%. So when we're now going in, and I'm going into businesses every day, we're getting a lot of work, every week. I'm walking in, and what we're seeing is the massive costs now to run business. And so when I look at my own business life and my own business career, and I see the costs that have gone through the roof, but not necessarily has the profits, and that continued with it. So to be smart in business, the people have been around a long time. We've had to maneuver and readjust, and sometimes you get to a point where you get to 20 staff, 30 staff, and you have to restructure and get it back down and get rid of some premises and whatever. I think today, the leasing costs now of what I see when I go into businesses is my first point of, wow, how are you guys doing that? And I don't see that decreasing. So every time someone's signing a lease and they're being put to a 5-year lease, there's increments and there's fixed increases. And at some stage, that bubble's going to burst.
Yeah.
And I think we're not far away.
Yeah. Are you seeing that, so people are just trying to operate like they always have been without factoring all these increases in everything?
No, I think what's happening is that, you've got obviously other rising costs. Now, if we talk about manufacturing now for the first time, and energy costs, power costs, labour costs. Every time we put wages up, that's fine. The government says we need to put wages up, and everyone would agree the wages have got to go up. But you've got to understand the small, medium, size, large business has got to factor that in as well. Then on top of that, insurances are going up, and the costs of everything generally continue to rise. And Australia is not, in my opinion, we're not a corporatised country of 250,000 businesses that are all corporately owned and running around with big investments on the money exchange, where the majority of the country is small to medium-sized businesses, and it's very, very costly now to run a business. So, yep, there are plenty of people that are being in front. There's a lot of people that are doing very well, but there's a lot of people that are being fixed into their business life for 2 years, 5 years, 8, 10 years, and if they can't restructure and they can't afford to move and restructure the way that I've been able to restructure over time, they're going to face some difficulties. And I'm sure that there's a lot of businesses in Australia that are facing a lot of difficulties, exactly like the people are facing difficulties at home. You know, when we're at home, I say to directors all the time, what do you think about first when you get up on a Monday morning? What's your worry? And everyone, most directors say it's their business life. And then I point out, I said, well, you know what? The first factor is it's home life, because home's a business life now as well. It's very expensive to run. And we all know that. Doesn't matter what you earn, doesn't matter who you are. You know, it's very expensive to have a home lifestyle now in Australia, but it's also very expensive for business owners as well.
Yeah. And mate, you're not seeing this this issue discriminate industries, right? It's going across.
No, it's across the board.
Yeah, yeah.
It's across the board, and the small businesses and the operators that can work for home with low overheads and things like that. Now with the internet and things changing dramatically in the last 10 years, never alone the last 5 years, that's made a big difference. But I think that people that manufacturing, certain industries, transport industries, industries that are working with big fixed overheads, they're the ones that are also too seeing. I would suggest anyway. Yep. And I'm not saying, by the way, this is not a generalised across the board. I'm sure there's plenty of people that sit there and say, "Oh, my business is doing really well," and everyone will have their opinion, but. I just see it in my own business life, and I just know what I go and see every day, and that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. And mate, is there really one main reason that people get wrapped up or closed up? Or
no, of course not. No, there's so many reasons. There's unfortunately we see a lot of people that get put into positions that just aren't. It's just not in their hands.
Yeah.
And that's the risk of being in business.
Yeah.
Then we do see people that have made decisions in the past. We see people where things change. As I said, when we start talking about leases, for example, and you sign a 5-year lease against a 3-year lease or a 2-year lease, I always look at it that I don't ever sign a 5-year lease. I've never signed a 5-year lease in my career. I'll never sign a 5-year lease, because if I want to readjust, or some key staff leave, or something economically happens that's not in my control, and if I need to restructure, I know what my worst case cost is going to be to get out each year. But if it's 4 years away, anything can happen in 5 years. You might need to expand, disband, life may change, you might need to get out. And if you're signing all these personal guarantees to these things, that can be a big problem. And so that's why, as I said, I look at things now. It's not transparent. It's a generalised issue across the board for a lot of people, and we just need to be smart as directors. And when we're setting up our businesses and we're looking at our 5-year plan, everyone says, and years ago I said 5-year plan too. I'd probably bring my plans now back down to 2 or 3, depending on what guarantees and what position I'm going to go into.
Yeah. And mate, on the asset side, are you seeing much in the way of debt exceeding the value of assets at the moment?
Look, that's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about second-hand assets, especially with manufacturing, especially with big machinery, what you've got to factor in now is the cost to be able to decommission something, pick it up, move it, reset it up, power it. The cost, 10, 20, 30 years ago was quite minimal. In the relative schemes of doing a deal for $1 million machine, might cost you $1 million to replace, and then one that comes on the market that might be 3 years old, you might be able to pick up for $300,000, for an example. But now to actually move that machine potentially and set it up and do what else, it might be now $450,000. So it actually, so when you're trying to tell, in the realisable world, trying to tell people that a machine that might be $1 million, but now is only going to bring $200,000 or $300,000 at auction, or maybe a bit less. Years ago, you might have been saying, "Oh, we're going to get 300 to 400," and people to move it might have been 25,000. Today you're probably 50,000, maybe even more. So there's a lot to sort of factor into what's going on. But we are seeing businesses selling for going concern numbers, and we are seeing going concern sales. So that hasn't stopped. They're certainly still there, and there's decent returns there if something's profitable and there's assets to it. But if it becomes a forced situation, no, the market's very, very tight, and we're back into a very, very tight market.
Yeah, tricky. Well, mate, I really appreciate the catch up today, and I know that when you get involved, you're always there to try and help business too, mate. And I think that's a real positive of yours, and how generous you are as a human being. So.
Yeah, look, I think and being in business a long time, I was well supported at a very young age, and and people gave me a shot, and you know, but I had to deliver as well, and I think I've done that for a long time, and so now when I see people, young people starting businesses and people that are in a bit of trouble and whatever else, not necessarily every time are we going in to look at doing a deal and saying, okay, we can make that money there. We know they're struggling, so we might have to, you know, we'll taper it off to help the situation. But then in this job over here, we might do really well with, and as my business is a small, medium-sized business that can grow quick, disband quick, I can make those financial decisions, and that also too then helps me build, you know, long-lasting relationships, which I've been able to do all my career.
Yeah, it's I love being out and about with you, mate, and running into people. People speak very highly of you. So, mate, I really appreciate your time today. The insight, I think people take a lot out of that, mate. So, thanks again, and mate, we'll probably get you back on and talk about something else one day, mate.
No worries. Anytime. Thank you very much.
If we can get you again.
Yeah, no, I'll be available.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.